Welcome to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd. On Digging Deeper, we have in-depth discussions with industry and extension experts about those important landscape topics. Tonight, we're going to continue that discussion about sustainable school gardens. Thank you for joining us once again for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. You know, last time we started to talk about gardening and gardens at Lincoln schools. Tonight we're going to hear about how we keep those gardens sustainable. Once again, I have guests Scott Wieskamp and Brittney Albin from Lincoln Public Schools. Welcome back. We're going to continue with this great discussion we had last time. And of course, the comments are going to roll in because this applies not only to Lincoln, it applies to any public school across the state and probably the country to some extent. So Scott, we started big picture last time. Let's talk about the big picture, which is, since you are a facilities guy, those two big schools that are on your plate right now.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We appreciate the opportunity. I think Brittney's going to be able to give you a lot of details, which is really good because we appreciate the fact that our community passed a bond issue in February, which is going to produce two new high schools in opposite sides of town. And those high school sites are much larger than in the past. If you look at a Lincoln High or a Northeast that are inner city, maybe 20-some acres per site, these new sites are in the proximity of 130 to 140 acres. And on the last show, we talked about community gardens and pollinator gardens that are really small, so to speak, small footprints within a school site. These entire high school sites, we want to be, in a sense, a community garden. We want the entire site to be a sustainable community masterpiece where everybody can participate, learn something, be on our sites. And so we're really proud of the fact that our board allowed us to pass a sustainability policy in the last several months, which helps give us at least a little backbone on some of the things that we're trying to do. And that relates not only to sites and site development, energy efficiency, renewable energies, all those types of things. So we want our sites to really be a learning tool. So the moment you get on our school sites, our new school sites, we want you to be actively learning.
That, you know, what a great thing for the next generations, because they'll just be immersed in it from the time they set foot in the schools. And of course, then we all hope they take that with them when they get out of school, go to the university or wherever and grow up and do it themselves. So Brittney, talk about how the connection is made between the physical facility and the education, and especially the sustainability education.
Yeah, so it depends site to site how that's being done, how that's being incorporated into the classroom. And the great thing about these spaces is it can really be an extension of the classroom, that you can go outside. That learning doesn't always have to happen on that whiteboard. You can go outside and have your lessons out there. So we're trying to work on how we more formalize that process of connecting it to curriculum. And we've talked a little bit before about how we get buy-in, how we maintain these spaces and sustain them year to year. Well, the more teachers are using those spaces, the more they're connecting it directly into what they need to be doing on a day-to-day basis, the more lasting those spaces will be as well, because they're going to be using it to achieve their daily education. And so we're trying to strive to make that more visible of how you can connect it into the classroom. So Scott was talking about with the high schools, we don't want to just design these sites to have all of these sustainable elements, have native plants, have raised beds, have a greenhouse even. We don't want to just design it that way. We want to actually make it very visible that we selected these different pieces. So if there's a rain garden there, we're going to have it labeled, we're going to have connections, maybe there's even online resources that they can be learning about what got put into that rain garden. If there's raised beds, why did we put them here? What's the soil quality over here? Or what were those factors that we assessed for putting things where we did on the site? Those decisions have gone on at every school, not always right from the bat, but what you don't know is how we came to those decisions or how we selected those areas. It's the same with the building of, it gets designed a certain way and there was a lot of decisions that went into that. Well, the same with the site. So how can we expose that and really peel back that process so that if they want to learn about this and even go into a career where this would be something they'd pursue, they've started to learn that at the K-12 level.
That's just fabulous. And you referenced rain gardens and labeling and access. Well, of course, our backyard farmer garden is rain gardens and raised beds and hops and greenhouses and those kinds of things. And we're always amazed at the number of people who discover it and use it, not daily, of course, unless you're on campus, but they come back seasonally, or they will graduate and come back with parents or children and wander through just to see what else is going on. So, there's that little piece of deliberate education. Let's have a class who goes out and learns something. And then there's that vicarious, or what is that plant? I wonder if I can grow it. Or I've never heard of Swiss chard, or I've never seen that it could be beautiful, as opposed to just something that comes in a salad that you either like or you don't like.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and a biology teacher may go out there and use that space, and they're going to know exactly what's going on, and they're going to be able to explain it to their students. But especially a high school, or any of our schools really, think about how many visitors, how many parents, how many community members come to those spaces all the time. And they may not have been there with the intention of exploring the campus, but now they're seeing signs and they're seeing information, and they're going for a walk around the space and seeing all of these great things that we've put into place.
Well, and I would think also that would be, the community connection is one that you've mentioned, but it would be a great go outside and play, physical activity, use the trails. Surely you're going to have trails through 140 acres to be able to do something, since you're a runner, Scott. I'm suspecting there will be some running going on at some of those, right? Yep. And again, that connection back to, you don't just go into a building and learn, you can learn for the entire process. So how about some examples of some of the schools that you've had success working with, whether they're elementary or existing high schools? Any little stories you want to tell us about those?
You want me to start?
Go for it. I'll give you this. I'll let you start.
All right, because you may know some other success stories. The ones that I've worked with most recently, that they're just really turning into shining examples. Some of them are newer, and some of them have been around for a while. So Beatty Elementary is one that comes to mind, because I think that garden's been around for about 18, 19 years. They have a master gardener in the neighborhood. She's connected to the school community in the neighborhood. But they've also had that school support. And what's great about that school is there's been obviously lots of transition over the years, but they've managed to keep revisioning it and keep it going and turn it into a really great example. But I don't always like to use that as an example, because it's a very intimidating space, because it has been going on for so long. But some of our other ones that have started up more recently, Mickle Middle School is a really great example as well. They have a science teacher, Katie Hammond, there has been phenomenal in coordinating that. And why I think she's a really great example of how to do a school garden is because she's gotten other staff on board. And that is so key, to not just be running it yourself in isolation. How do you get all the kids involved? How do you get other staff involved? How do you get parents involved? She even has students coming back that have moved on to high school, still coming back to volunteer and look at that space and see how it's changed. So we have many other examples. I could go on, but I'll see what else Scott wants to add.
Well, I have to add first that both my sons went to Beatty.
Oh, yeah.
And my one set of grandchildren is going to Beatty. And the difference between my sons going and my grandchildren going in terms of what is there is really phenomenal to see what's available.
And we have a handful of additional examples, but just as we've talked earlier, sustaining momentum on a site once it's been developed is really critical. And so, quite frankly, I would rather have less gardens that are sustainable than more gardens that are difficult to keep functioning and keep flowing. And so we've been taking baby steps. We're going to keep working harder to find those partners to have examples like a Beatty or a Mickle or a McPhee that we've talked about earlier, and the new high schools that we talked about. We want the community to interact in our sites. We really do. We want our sites to be a learning experience. And another good example that's not about gardens, but Brittney's been heavily involved, is our composting program. We're probably the only school district in the state, and probably regional, and basically the size we are, that is composting in all of our school facilities. That's phenomenal, how much we're diverting from the landfill, and kids are learning from that. Right. And the kids that we're teaching are going home and telling mom and dad, well, how come you're throwing that in the garbage? right? It ought to go in the compost pile. So we need to teach that next generation of those things, because we can't keep creating landfills, because we're going to run out of land for those types of experiences. That composting needs to go to the garden, so to speak. So she's been very instrumental in that program. We appreciate that.
So where on site is the compost pile?
Yeah, so there's a few schools that are composting on site. The program that Scott was referencing is our cafeteria composting.
Sure.
And because of the volume of material that comes out of there, we do send it off-site to be processed. And that's actually part of why we want to make sure it's happening in our gardens in any way that it can, because it is going off-site, and students and staff are missing that chance to watch it break down and watch it become that final product. So we have schools. I can think of Elliott's. I know Sheridan has built a structure in their garden. I know Mickle does as well. We have several of our, and I want to say Holmes as well, has a structure where they can take material from their garden, and then maybe it's the after-school program has a snack that day and it had something that could be composted. So maybe there's a banana peel or something like that. They're incorporating it and showing them, okay, just like you put this in the compost bin at lunch and it gets hauled somewhere, now we're going to watch it break down here, and this is what happens to that material that goes off somewhere else as well. And I do want to mention Holmes as well as another really good example, because that's one, the CLC, or the after school program, has been really involved. They built that garden, but they've also got a master gardener who's helping them figure out, what do we plant when, what's going on here. So they've got that local expert, and then they're also bringing in community volunteers. There's a nearby church that their volunteers are coming in, and then they do a parent harvest night each week when their garden's really thriving. They bring in the families. So that's one of those perfect examples of where there's multiple pieces. It's not on one person's shoulders, and it's not just one person enjoying all the benefits of the space either. They're really engaging so many different people in it that it really feels like a community resource.
And multiple generations.
Absolutely.
Which is really great.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Scott, as you know, my students over the years have done a lot of design work with schools and are looking forward to doing that again. And you mentioned, you know, a teacher takes hold of it. One of the pieces that I think is, to me, it makes so much sense, but for a lot of people it has to be that aha moment. You can teach math in that garden just like that. How many petals are on that flower? How many tomatoes? How much did that grow? Those kinds of things. Or art, for sure, or history, or literature. Any of the subjects that we hope our children learn, you can use the gardens or the school site,
Yep,
the
exactly.
landscape, as that learning experience. And I think that's built into the curriculum anyway, but it seems like that's becoming really more powerful as well.
And we really appreciate that partnership, even on the post-secondary education level that you're involved in with those students, because I think that's a good experience for them, because that's early in their career, but yet they're learning the things that we've obviously learned over time in terms of the benefits, the pros and cons of how you sustain a garden on a school site. And so they're learning by hands-on experience, and so that's been fun. That's good, and we've got some more projects to do, it sounds like, in the next few months, right?
I think we have a few that we might be working on, and I'm sure, again, other communities are in the same situation. Let's get the big kids involved, partly because they learn from working with a younger cohort, and the little ones, of course, may or may not look up to the big brother, big sister as they're doing that. So as you think about, again, what is exciting about, building sustainability into it, working with all of the people in the community and the schools themselves, any particular one piece that just absolutely stands out that you think this applies to every single situation, other than how you bring everybody together with it? Is there one thing that you want at every single school?
Well, you talked about bringing everybody together. The partnership is critical, and I think Brittney mentioned that it can't fall on the shoulders of one person. It has to rely on a community to make something sustainable. And so getting that buy-in, whether it's from the teacher, or whether it's from the parents or the students, or the administration at the building, and even at the district level from people like Brittney and I who have to review the process, you have to get that buy-in, and you have to really be passionate about wanting it to survive. And that's no different than any project that you take on. So partnerships are critical. It can't fall on one person's shoulders.
So you don't see this as one of those trends that, oh, let's see, we wore platform shoes and tie-dye, and 20 years later we don't do that, and then it cycles back again. You see this as perhaps
we hope not, because the example of the new high schools where we want the entire site to be a learning experience, quite frankly, we'd like all of our sites to be that way, but that means you have to go back now and make some course corrections. And you can't do that overnight either. So you have to gain some momentum, and it's going to take time. I mean, it might take 20 years to convert the entire district into sustainable sites and buildings. And so, but that's okay. You have to be patient, and you have to be passionate, and you have to have the right people that are in those roles to continue to work towards getting that done.
And the longer we all live and the more technology changes, the more new products, new ideas are going to come forward with it.
Well, and just talking about all the possibilities for connections. I mean, just mentioned technology, and technology in the garden is a whole nother avenue we're seeing as well. We've seen examples in other school districts. But if I would say, just to build on that one piece that we want to make sure happens, it's exactly what you talked about, of every subject area seeing how they connect with these spaces. We don't want this to just be the science teachers or those science lessons being seen as a connection. We've actually worked with community partners like Project Learning Tree or Project Wild, those people who facilitate those trainings, to help our teachers understand, yes, I can go do an English lesson outside and use this as a learning space. I can go do an art lesson outside, or I can, connect all of these different pieces. It's not just the science curriculum. And the more we can get our teachers comfortable taking kids outside, because that's a whole nother thing of classroom management outside, and then comfortable connecting it to curriculum and seeing it as an extension of their classroom, that will just help these spaces be more sustainable and lasting through the years.
Excellent. Make sure you watch us on Facebook. Send us all your comments and your questions, because we do not want to do this, Digging Deeper, if we're not digging deeper into subjects that you want to hear about. And we think this one is really important. We've visited this topic before. We probably are going to visit it again. So you mentioned, outdoors and what happens. How do you get people who are afraid of bees, teachers in particular, to stop being afraid of bees? We've encountered that one with, I'm afraid of bees. I don't want to take my children outside.
Yeah, I'll just speak from a training that I attended that I found really valuable to witness with, actually, it was the staff at Beatty Elementary. I watched them go through a training for outdoor learning with Lindsay Rogers from Game and Parks. She does the Growing Up Wild curriculum, and she basically spent the time talking with teachers about how things are going to go wrong. Someone's going to get stung. Someone's going to get a little, get some dirt on them, or might not, look exactly the same way they did when they went outside, and helping everyone just become comfortable with that. If you can help teachers feel prepared, and I know this is a thing that our community learning centers have focused on training for this as well, of how do we get comfortable and feel safe managing students outside, that they're learning something but still staying safe. Those are trainings that you can walk through staff with so that they feel more comfortable doing that. So actually, when I witnessed that training, there was a staff member who got stung outside, of course. And, that was just the reality of what's going to happen. And hopefully they're not scarred, and they'll still take their students outside, and just being okay with it's not going to go perfectly. And that's actually part of the learning process. Just like something might not grow in the garden that you expected to, that's not a failure, that's part of the process of gardening. And so we want them to witness all of those things and realize that that's just part of the process.
Excellent. Do you want to give our viewers your URL so they can visit you?
Yeah. So the most information about our school gardens is going to be on the LPS website, so lps.org, and then keyword search sustainability, and you'll end up where our garden programs are.
Excellent. That is unfortunately all the time we have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. We want to say thanks to Scott and Brittney for coming back in and talking with us again. We will be back next week with another in-depth discussion. Do be sure to watch Backyard Farmer live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Central on NET. Thanks for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer.